9. The arrival of Do Shui Yi, the ex-wife, and her request for 4 favors. Soon after he entered the order, his wife Do Shui Yi came and begged him to disrobe, to become a layman again. She wooed and wailed and wept so much that Yi Lei Sayadaw remarked even he himself became almost tearful from her sad wailing. No matter how much his wife lamented, Yu Kawi would not be persuaded. Finally, realizing that it was to be in vain, Do Shui Yi backed off, asking only 4 promises as a favor. 1. To let her be the patron of a bhikkhu's 4 requisites, 34, for Yu Kawi. 2. To deliver sermons and admonitions if and when she requested. 3. To come back and reside in their native Sunlun village when she could afford to build a monastic abode for him. 4. To let her live as she pleased. Yu Santin's request to Sayadaw Yu Kawi to expound Patipati Sasana, the practice of Dharma. In the year 1922, ME 1284, Yu Santin came to make Tila to pay a visit to his friend at Yi Lei Monastery. He remarked, "Sayadaw Yu Kawi, do you remember that prophetic rhyme I recited to you some time ago when you were still a layman? 1 thread, 2 threads. What a mess! This old lady Ame Boke's bulk of entangled threads. Who in the world be able to clear up this tangle? Spinning about with a shuttle on a loom. Was Ma Kuei dressed in a Pondor-designed longyi with green fringe and checkered blue. The stump of the ruined pagoda is now radiating with light. From the Kyunbo teak loom, sound boomed and echoed through the 10,000 universe. Now, it has come true just as the rhyme had prophesied. There is a cotton weaving factory, representing a loom, now at the south of Sunlun village. That is why, starting from this year, the time has now arrived for you to expound Patipati Sasana, Vipassana, the practice of Dharma. For that purpose, I humbly request you come back and reside at our Sunlun village. If you decide to come, I shall talk over with Do Shui Yi to build a monastic abode for your residence, after which I too shall enter the order." Yu Kawi accepted the offer solemnly. After getting the solemn promise, Yu Santin went back to Sunlun village and told Do Shui Yi to start building a monastic abode. Meanwhile, he himself got ordained as a bhikkhu and waited at the Mong Yin Po chalk ravine after dispatching Do Shui Yi to make tila with the invitation. There were teak trees around the vicinity of the monastery. Of the 2 kun pillars, one represented a bhikkhu from Kun Gyeongon and another from Kun site. Do Shui Yi's offering of a monastic abode. For Sayadaw Yu Kawi's residence at Mong Yin Po ravine, Do Shui Yi came to make tila where Sayadaw Yu Kawi was staying. She invited him to return to their native Sunlun village and reside at the new monastic abode she had built for him. That year 1922 in June, ME 1284, at the start of Vaso, the rain's retreat period, Sayadaw Yu Kawi departed from Yi Lei Monastery and came back to reside in the new monastery at Mong Yin Po ravine, which is situated at east of Sunlun village. Throughout the 3 months of rain's retreat period, to disseminate Patipati Sasana, Vipassana practice, for insight knowledge, he taught the people there on how to build, nurture, develop and perfect samadhi, mind concentration, by Anapana Kamathana, in breathing and out-breathing method, thereby helping them to practice, improve and eventually advance to attain the highest level of insight knowledge. Record on questions by Fet Pin Ein Sayadaw and answers by Sayadaw Yukawi. On the 10th of May 1925, 4th waning day of Kaisan, 1287 ME, at Abya village, Bago Township. Q. When the eye, kaku, and visual object, ruparamana, come into contact, does the eye go to visual object or does visual object comes to the eye? A. The eye does not go to the visual object nor the visual object goes to the eye. Q. Then, how does one see? A. Because of the property of eye sensitivity elements, kaku pasada, one sees. Q. In that case, the visual object goes to the eye sensitivity elements, right? A. No. It doesn't, Venerable Sir. For example, when one looks at the sun, there is this bright illuminating light due to the property of the sun, making one winks from discomfort. The sun doesn't go into the eyes, nor the eyes into the sun. Q. Very well then. Now, tell me about Nibbana. A. Please, sir. Let me tell you this way. Venerable Sir, say, a yogi, 35, takes up Vipassana practice and meditates diligently. In time, he realizes the arising and perishing of the elements of mind, concomitants of mind and matter, in his body to be extremely unpleasant and becomes genuinely weary of all these. Upon looking for the cause of this suffering, he finds the culprit to be craving, tanha. Path knowledge, magga arises immediately on discovery of this truth, eliminating craving, tanha, whereupon the chain of cause and effect, resultant, is abolished. The state of arising and perishing of the elements of mind-body phenomena, taking place prior to the elimination by path knowledge is sankhata, conditioned. The state immediately after the decisive elimination, when the chain of cause and effect is cut off totally, nothing takes place. Having had the cause abolished, there isn't any arising of its effect, resultant, i.e., no arising and perishing of the elements. This is asankhata, nibbana, unconditioned. Q. In the nibbana you had just described, are there lights and colors like the sun and the moon? A. No, there aren't, Venerable Sir. Q. Then, tell me, what is nibbana like? A. There isn't any to tell, Venerable Sir. Q. In that case, does it mean nibbana doesn't exist? A. Nibbana does exist, Venerable Sir. Q. There are four ultimate realities, ultimate truths, paramatta, 36, namely, consciousness, citta, mental concomitants, cetasika, matter, rupa, and extinction of craving, nibbana, aren't there? A. Yes, there are, Venerable Sir. Q. Tell me about those ultimate realities, paramatta. A. Venerable Sir, if you ask me about ultimate realities, paramatta, there aren't any to tell, as there are no words to describe them. I, Yukawi, simply would have to sit here with folded arms, and remain silent. Q. Wait a minute. Can you say, for example, that this block of gold will turn into lead just by saying that this gold is lead? A. No. The gold won't turn into lead, Venerable Sir. But the process of understanding the meaning of the ultimate realities, truths, paramatta, is so deep and subtle that they cannot be shown or scrutinized by physical evidence like panati, conventional truths, conceptuals. The ultimate cessation of mind, nama, and matter, rupa, in the recurring phenomena of arising, upadana, momentary existence, titi, disintegrating, banga, known as upad-bin in short form. That is what is called nibbana. Q. Tell me about the development of 10 levels of insight knowledge, Vipassana Nana. A. Take for example, a yogi practices anapana, the practice of mindfulness on the touch of out-breath and in-breath, to build up samadhi, mind concentration. When a certain level of concentration has been built up, he starts to practice mindfulness on the sensation, Vedana Nupassana. At first, he takes the sensation with conceptualization, perceptive notion, sana, i.e. pain as pain, my pain. But gradually, after much practice, he comes to discern the true phenomenon of Dharma, the arising and perishing of sensation, which occurs at the intersection of mind and matter, in its real nature, without the sense of self. He begins to feel dread and disgust of the bodily phenomena, of the arising and perishing, and thence of the mundane world. Q. The 10 levels of insight knowledge, Vipassana Nana, have to be practiced and developed level by level, isn't that so? A. Only if you want to, Venerable Sir. It is up to your choice. Q. How are you going to achieve if not level by level? A. Just by practicing the Samasana Nana, 37, the first level of the 10, that is, by observing and mindful of the sensations, insight is acquired with regards to the arising and perishing of elements of sensations, followed by weariness, dread and disgust, of life itself. Fet Pin Ein Sayadaw commented, wait a minute, yes. The observing of sensation elements, i.e. contemplating on the 3 characteristics of life, namely impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta, by observing on mind and matter, is Samasana Nana, level 1. The understanding of arising and disintegrating nature of these mind-body elements, conditioned things, is Udayabhaya Nana, level 2. The knowledge of the incessant dissolving nature of the bodily phenomena is Banga Nana, level 3. As you meditate, the arising and perishing of mind and matter, nama and rupa, become very fast, so much so that you see only the perishing but not the arising. Becoming afraid, because you begin to see the faults, the troublesome effects, the unsatisfactoriness, of all these bodily, nama-rupa, phenomena is Bhaya-nana, level 4. Becoming dread and disgust of all these is Adanava-nana, level 5. Yes. Yes. I'm coming to see the point. You are right. You are right. Q. Yukawi. In this world, in conventional terms, as Panati, there are Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami and Arahanta, 38, aren't there? A. Yes there are, Venerable Sir. Q. Do these Aryas progress straight away from Sotapanna to Sakadagami to Anagami and finally to Arahanta? A. No they don't, Venerable Sir. Q. Then how do they progress from stage to stage? Do tell me the process of their advancement. A. For example, a yogi meditates and practices from the Samasana Nana level, i.e. mindfully observing the sensation. He endeavors and transcends from level to level until he reaches the 10th level. He is then said to be a Sotapanna in conventional terms, Panati. Then again, he continues practicing, starting from the Samasana Nana level, i.e. watching the true phenomenon of mind and matter mindfully. He proceeds from level to level till he progressed to the 10th level of insight knowledge. He is then called Sakadagami. He still has to start back again on the Samasana Nana level, observing and being mindful of the elements of mind-matter phenomena, and on completion of the 10th level, he is said to have become Anagami. Then, for the last time, he starts again meditating at the samasana nana level, mindful watching of the elements of bodily sensation. Advancing from level to level, he reaches the 10th level, where he finally attains the stage of arahatship, the ultimate goal, and is then conventionally called an arahant. No further record would be made because of excessive mundane usage of description. Closing square bracket. Demarcation of a Sima, ordination hall, at Nemandara mountaintop, Thatan city. For the propagation of Sasana, the devotees of Thatan had wanted to establish a Sima, 39, an ordination hall, on the Nemandara mountaintop. For that purpose, they cordially invited a venerable Sayadaw renowned for his morality and serenity to conduct the process. Soon after arriving at the monastery, which was situated at the foot of the mountain, he gave instructions to the bhikkhus in his entourage and to the local devotees to prepare all that was necessary for the Sima. Rock pillars for boundary demarcation of the Sima, together with bamboo and timber to be used, were collected and sent to the mountaintop. The next morning, much to everybody's surprise and dismay, all the things they had carried on their backs to the mountaintop were found at the foot of the mountain. The venerable Sayadaw reassured the devotees that there need not be any apprehension, and once again, all the materials were dispatched to the mountaintop. This time, he instructed some people to sleep there as sentry. But the next early morning, the rock pillars and the building materials, together with the people who slept nearby to watch over, were mysteriously found at the foot of the mountain, just like the previous night. These unearthly incidents provoked fear and apprehension among the devotees, so much so that nobody dared to go near the mountain. But the leading Sayadaw attempted to pursue the daunting task for one more time. Nevertheless, there were so many hindrances and obstacles put up by the spirits of the mountain that in the end, he could not take any more. He was forced to flee back home in a hurry, but unfortunately died on the way. Thus, further attempts to establish a Sima at the Nemandara mountaintop was abolished due to enormous impediment. Soon afterward, U Kanti, of Mandalay Hill, the famed hermit, paid a visit to Thatan. There, the people requested him to conduct the consternating task of establishing a Sima at the mountaintop. U Kanti accepted and advised, "Very well, I will take care of the building itself. But for the task of demarcation of Sima, it can only be done by bhikkhus, and as a hermit I cannot take that responsibility. You should seek the help of Nyang Lunt Sayadaw, U May Dawi," explaining the situation here. Taking U Kanti's advice, the devotees went to Nyang Lunt to approach for the Sayadaw's help. Nyang Lunt Sayadaw did not accept the invitation immediately. He dispatched some of his disciples to Sayadaw Yukawi at Mong Yin Po Ravine, telling him to come as soon as possible. After the messengers explained the situation, Sayadaw Yukawi contemplated the task he was asked to undertake by making asseveration of truth, adhitthana. His friend Yu Santin, who was also versed in supernatural powers, foretold like this: "Are you looking back at the past? Do go and see the things you had done before on that mountain. There is a little mound at the Sunday corner, northeast corner, of the precincts. Start preparations from there and you will succeed." When Sayadaw Yukawi arrived, Nyang Lunt Sayadaw asked him whether he should accept the request to demarcate the Sima. Sayadaw Yukawi told him to do so, and so he accepted the invitation and had a date fixed for the operations. Then, he said, "Yukawi, I have accepted the offer. When we get there, you'll be in charge for organizing everything for the demarcation of Sima at the mountaintop. Start preparing now." And do let me know of anything you need. I'll see to it that you get everything. Yukawi replied that he would need lots of special pennants, little triangular flags with lace border which are traditionally used for offering at pagodas. Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw asked, "What are they for?" To which Sayadaw Yukawi replied, "I want to give them as presents, to the spirits of the mountain." "Now, I understand. All right. I'll have lots of penance done." Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw then added, "Yukawi, you will have to read Kamavaka 40 at the ceremony." "Venerable Sir, if that is the case, you must teach me," replied Yukawi. Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw personally taught him the way to pronounce precisely and recite the words of the Kamavaka with accurate and proper intonation. When Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw finished the reading, Yukawi held the Kamavaka script and recited exactly as Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw had done. He then said, "Venerable Sir, please correct me now if you are not satisfied with my recitation. Don't scold me later in front of the audience there if something goes wrong. If you recite like this, it's good enough," remarked Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw with satisfaction. Some senior disciples of Nyaung Lunt Monastery were not happy that Yukawi was to be included in the entourage for the occasion. They appealed to Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw saying, "Venerable Sir, please don't include Yukawi in the party for the trip. He's not educated and he had been married before. He might make us lose face at the ceremony, if he read the Kamavaka improperly." Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw ignored their protests, replying, "Well, each one has his own way of seeing things." In 1923 March, ME 1284, Tabor, the devotees of Thaton chartered a private train carriage for the Sayadaws and their entourage. Altogether 7 famed and learned Venerable Sayadaws were in the party. They were 1. Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw U Medhavi. 2. Megtila Yile Sayadaw. 3. Jokpin Sayadaw U Tika. 4. Sayadaw U Kavinda of Nyaung Lunt Monastery. 5. Sunlun Sayadaw U Kawi of Mong Yin Po Ravine Monastery. 6. U Vijaya from Mong Yin Po Ravine Monastery. 7. U Kosala of Sunlun. After passing by Bago City, while the train was going at a high speed, a strange monk suddenly hopped up from the ground and held on to their carriage from outside. The Venerable Sayadaws told him, "This whole carriage is hired as a private compartment. You must go somewhere else." But the monk retorted, "Oh, private or not, I couldn't care less." So saying, he barged into the carriage through the window. Once inside, he stared at the Sayadaws and declared mockingly, "So, you're all going to Siala, Sri Lanka, as missionaries to propagate Sasana like Shin Mahinda, 41, did, oh no, to Thaton I mean, bravo. Bravo." Thus shouting, he rattled a little wooden bell that he had brought along and said, Look at this bell, there isn't any clapper inside. It's hollow." Then pointing with his forefinger to each of the 7 Venerable Sayadaws, he counted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and with me altogether 8. He inquired, "Where do you all come from?" To which the Sayadaws replied, "We came from Nyaung Lunt." "Is it Nyaung Chin or Nyaung Kiat?" "Well, must be Body Nyaung." After these nonsensical remarks, he jumped out of the speeding train before anyone could stop him. Sayadaw U Kawi told Nyaung Lunt Sayadaw of his interpretation of the peculiar incident. "Venerable Sir, this bogus monk had mentioned about a bell but without a clapper. It denotes that there will be a hindrance at the Sima demarcation ceremony by a bhikkhu, but the hindrance won't be successful as the bell without a clapper cannot make any sound. Nyang Lunt Sayadaw replied, I don't think any bhikkhu will put up any impediment as the work is of service to the order of Samga. U Kawi remarked, well, just wait and see if you don't believe me, Venerable Sir. The impediment will be by a bhikkhu, but the demarcation of Sima will be accomplished. On arrival at the railway station of Thaton, the Venerable Sayadaws and their entourage were enthusiastically welcomed by a huge crowd led by the high government officials such as U Po Sa and U Kyordan together with other patrons and devotees of the town. The Venerable Sayadaws were then driven in a motorcade to the monastery at the foot of Nemandara mountain. As soon as dusk fell, Sayadaw U Kawi collected the candles donated by devotees and went up the mountain. On reaching the top, he lit up the whole mountain with candles and set up the pennants he had brought all over the place. He then called upon the guardian spirits of the mountain, O guardians of Nemandara mountain, I give you these candles and decorated pennants. You may offer them in paying homage to the Buddha that you so worship. I give you all these. Do take and make your offering. He then stood at the Sunday, northeast, corner of the precincts, prepared, parikama, his mind to start contemplating on Dharma and meditated on loving kindness, metta bhavana, disseminating it to the spirits of the mountain together with all beings. Sayadaw U Kawi later recounted of the guardian spirits of the Nemandara mountain. He said gave a discourse in Thaton where lots of people attended. In that audience, the last one to come and pay homage was King Manuha of Thaton dressed in royal regalia. In that past life, Sayadaw U Kawi happened to be Bam Sayadaw, the king's highly respected mentor. Some bhikkhus reported to Nyang Lunt Sayadaw criticizing that U Kawi had been conducting only mundane things which were inappropriate. Sayadaw U Kawi explained to Nyang Lunt Sayadaw, Venerable Sir, say for example, if the government forcefully confiscate your monastery compound exercising their power and authority, and drive you away. You may leave because you can't fight them back, but would you like it? Of course not, replied Nyang Lunt Sayadaw. But then, if they came to you, cordially requesting you to move temporarily to some other place, saying they need the place for some urgent important matters, adding that you may return to your own monastery after everything had been done and settled. You will be satisfied then, won't you? In that way, of course I'll be satisfied, agreed Nyang Lunt Sayadaw. Everybody then understood and was rest assured upon hearing Sayadaw U Kawi's explanation. Having witnessed so many dangerous hurdles in the past, the devotees watched nearby with much apprehension of the Venerable Sayadaw's proceedings. But then, to their amazement and delight, they found that unlike before, the rock pillars, bamboo, timber and all materials for boundary demarcation of the Sima that were sent up the mountain were not brought back. They had stayed in place. They found that even a toilet for the bhikkhus had been built at the mountain base without any hitches. They talked among themselves with joy and boosted morale. Hurrah! Now, anything can be done at the mountaintop. There won't be any opposition. The haunted mountain is now free of poltergeists' works. This is indeed wonderful. On the day the area within the demarcated boundaries were to be ceremonially cleared for the Sima, the Samga held a congregation at a specific time chosen by Sayadaw U Kawi. There, Nyang Lunt Sayadaw put the Kamavaka text into Sayadaw U Kawi's hands telling him, U Kawi, will you please read the Kamavaka first? Sayadaw U Kawi recited the Kamavaka with clear resonant voice and the right intonation as required with no fault at all. After Sayadaw U Kawi's reading, Nyang Lunt Sayadaw told his senior disciples to repeat the Kamavaka, but they read with mistakes for which they were duly reproached. See what you've done. Back at our monastery, You had protested not to bring along the uneducated bhikkhu with no knowledge of the Pali text lest he brought shame in front of the assembly. Now, you couldn't even recite like the bhikkhu you had criticized. The proceeding of Kamavaka reading was completed by Nyang Lunt Sayadaw followed by Yi Lei Sayadaw. Finally, the task of Thane Note, preparatory ritual for clearing the site of Sima, was successfully carried out and officially effected, after which the demarcation pillars for the Sima were sent to the mountaintop. The next day, just before the ceremony of Sima demarcation started, a certain bhikkhu came in and asked, "Venerable sirs, what type of Sima are you going to declare?" To which Nyang Lunt Sayadaw answered, "As regional type, nay Thane." The bhikkhu tried to raise objections on the procedure as improper, vaguely stating this and that. Jokpin Sayadaw Utika, one of the elderly venerable Sayadaws, intervened firmly. All right, if you think the procedure is not a proper one, do show us appropriate reasons and evidence in accordance with the Pitaka text. We on our side are willing to let you see tenable statements with reference to the text if you so desire. Do you want to see them? Only then, the bhikkhu left. Demarcation of the Sima was to be done in regional type, and in accordance to the protocol, consent was obtained from all bhikkhus living in the proposed region of the Sima, and certain bhikkhus in the region were invited to participate in the ritual. After all these preparations had been done, at 10 o'clock that night, the chosen auspicious hour, they strike the big brass bells and beat the hollow trunks, traditionally used at monasteries, as a way of signaling and notifying the guardian spirits of the locality. At last, the demarcation ceremony started. Late that night, Sayadaw Ukawi contemplated with his meditative supernormal powers to find out whether the operation had been successful. He discovered that a certain bhikkhu from another region had been in the proposed demarcated zone of Sima without giving his consent. He saw and heard in his vision the conversation between that bhikkhu and another one. Realizing that the official demarcation of the Sima was not successful, he informed what he saw and heard to Nyang Lunt Sayadaw, relating the conversation between the two bhikkhus. He said the bhikkhu from another region was saying to the other, "You know, the declaration of Sima demarcation was not successful. While they were carrying out the official ritual, I was within their region of the circumscribed zone for the Sima at a particular time and at a particular place without giving my consent. So their demarcation of the Sima had failed." Nyang Lunt Sayadaw gave orders to search for those two bhikkhus. When they were found, he interrogated them and it was confirmed the demarcation had been nullified, as one bhikkhu from another region had been in the confined zone while conducting the official demarcation. The next day, the venerable Sayadaws asked lay devotees as well as government officials for their help in soliciting consent from all bhikkhus living in the proposed demarcated region. After obtaining the required consent from all bhikkhus living in the demarcated region, they proceeded the rituals as before. At last, the formidable task of officially demarcating the Sima was accomplished. The demarcation pillars were then erected at the boundaries of the Sima. The people were so happy with the profound success of demarcation of the Sima, that many devotees danced and sang with ebullience. One high government official named Ukyor Dun became so overwhelmed with joy that he swept up Sayadaw Ukawi, carrying him on his shoulders and shouting at the top of his voice, "Here is the true Arahat! Here is the real Arahat!" The next day, at the assembly for discourses, Sayadaw Ukawi was cordially requested to give a sermon. He did so, recounting his first sermon, which comprised of the many sufferings he had encountered in his life. He then continued referring several hardships of the local audience, many of whom have to endure for their livelihood by picking durian and plucking mangosteen fruits in the orchards. It deeply struck their hearts, so much so that even the kids took heart to his discourse, singing in a rhyme this way. Have to pick the durians thou, you don't want to. Have to pluck the mangosteens thou, you don't want to. And do you know why? 'Cause of your wrong refuge in attachment and desire. The memorable rhyme was remembered in Thaton for many years to come. One night, Sayadaw U Kawi heard someone calling out, "U Kawi, U Kawi." He went downstairs and saw an unfamiliar bhikkhu who asked him, "Follow me over there." For a moment, he thought to himself, "This bhikkhu is a total stranger. But if I don't follow him, he'll get into trouble. If I do, I shall encounter hardship. Well, I'd rather be the one who suffer." So, he walked behind following that bhikkhu who took him a long way into the dark jungle. When they got far deep into the woods, the bhikkhu turned around and said, "That's enough, venerable sir, you may return now. I'll get you back to the monastery." U Kawi replied, "Oh, never mind, I will return on my own." He trekked back in pitch darkness, working out his way alone, but arrived back to the monastery much sooner and easier than the earlier trip. Note: the objective of the bhikkhu's expedition was to test Sayadaw U Kawi's composure and serenity in facing adversity. He wanted to find out whether Sayadaw U Kawi would get frightened and lose his poise in the night of the deep jungle. Sayadaw U Kawi's fame began to spread far and wide. One Sayadaw from Karwaiway village of Thaton Township came to see him. Nyang Lunt Sayadaw cautioned Sayadaw U Kawi. This Sayadaw had studied and practiced samatha extensively and believed himself to be a tip-top expert on Lokiya powers, mundane occult powers. You'd better find out the extent of his ability. On meeting him, Sayadaw U Kawi asked him on how he started his preliminary procedure, parikama, for practice of samatha, tranquility meditation. Karwaiway Sayadaw described his practice with preliminary work, parikama, of how initially, one had to contemplate on a kasina object for acquired image, agaha nimitta, and went on to describe things he had learnt on the subject matter together with his varied views. Sayadaw U Kawi asked, "You've mentioned just now something related to a beetle box. Would you kindly tell me, venerable sir, how many beetle leaves are there in this beetle box?" 42. Karwaiway Sayadaw admitted that his mental powers could no longer follow or penetrate that much. Sayadaw U Kawi then told him accurately how many beetle leaves there were in the box. In return, Karwaiway Sayadaw asked Sayadaw U Kawi of the preliminary procedures, parikama, and the meditation method, to which the latter explained everything in detail. Karwaiway Sayadaw then commented, "You are still young, strive more to advance further in the future. As for myself, I'm getting old and afflicted with residual effects of stroke. I can't concentrate anymore to such an extent." He went on, "Long time ago, U Uttama, U Tiloka from Thitchar town and I went into the forest to contemplate in search of Dharma. We had decided then to return only if we could deliver Dharma to the people from the sky, staying aloft in the sky with the use of supernormal powers. But instead of accomplishing that goal, we met with so many difficulties that we had to abandon our plan and came back home." Note: Sayadaw U Uttama, after parting the company of his two friends, Sayadaw U Tiloka of Thitchar town and Karwaiway Sayadaw, came to inquire and had learnt Sayadaw U Kawi's Vipassana method before Karwaiway Sayadaw came. So Sayadaw U Kawi already knew the history of the three Sayadaws. In fact, while U Uttama was meditating under Sayadaw U Kawi's guidance, he had composed a poem describing the relative easiness for the ladies in search of Dharma as compared to men and bhikkhus who possessed high ego and conceit. The poem was as follows. Great oxen with their large humps and formidable horns couldn't draw unloaded carts up the hill. Cows, on the other hand, with no horns nor humps, slender hoofs and frail, weighted down with goods on carts they pull. Even so, they hold firm and mightily struggle their way. Likewise, he meant, female yogis who meditated generally did not harbor any doubts nor have much query, but simply follow the teacher's instructions with faith, fervor and zeal, and hence, found the Dharma sooner. On the other hand, bhikkhus and men who meditated in search of Dharma, being learnt and knowledgeable to some extent, tended to have skeptical doubts, comparing and contrasting, wavering and wondering on the method being taught and on Dharma, i.e., the meditative findings in practice, with what they had learned. That was why, for them, it was more difficult and took a longer time to reach the goal. After completion of Sima demarcation at Nemandara mountaintop, the 7 venerable sayadaws took the train for the return journey from Thaton. On the way back, Sayadaw U Kawi remarked to Nyang Lunt Sayadaw on the incident that happened during the earlier trip. I had foretold on the incident of that strange monk who hopped into the train, you know, the one who looked more like a hermit than a bhikkhu. It was obvious, wasn't it, that hindrance was put up by a bhikkhu, but it was not effective, just as the wooden bell he carried couldn't make any sound as it was without a clapper. In the end, it was a resounding success like I had predicted. Yes, U Kawi, how right you were, conceded Nyang Lunt Sayadaw.